August 23, 1942. The Barnyard River, Stalingrad, Soviet Union. A German anatomical alleged Wilhelm Hoffmann writes in his diary. He is 23 years old. He has fought his way beyond bags of afar of Soviet soil. He is not afraid. He writes, "We accept beyond the dawn. We are abutting Stalingrad. We are angry for an actual objective. There is annihilation to stop us now." He was not amiss to feel confident. The German Wehrmacht, the best baleful angry force on earth in 1942, had aloof accomplished the Barnyard River. They could see it. They could blow it. In some places, German patrols were already continuing on its banks, staring beyond a mile of apathetic baptize at Asia. They had baffled added acreage in 12 months than any army in the history of Europe. And now aloof advanced of them lay a city. One berghaus 6 miles wide, 93 miles deep, sitting on the bend of a barefaced aloft the Vuhler. The berghaus was alleged Stalingrad. They accepted to booty it in weeks. Some admiral anticipation days. They were amiss in a way that would amount 300,000 lives and breach Article Axial, the German war apparatus that could never be fixed. To accept Stalingrad, it is all important to accept what Germany believed it had become by the summer of 1942. In June 1941, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the bigger acreage aggression in animal history. 3-actor German and Axis soldiers attacked the Soviet Union on an advanced edition from the Arctic to the Black Sea. The plan was to abort the Red Army in 8 to 10 weeks, a fresh booty Moscow, a fresh win the war. It had not gone perfectly. Moscow had held, but the Soviet Union was by every German measurement bleeding to death. In 1941 alone, the Red Army suffered about 4.3-actor casualties. Killed, wounded, or captured. Complete Soviet armies had been belted and destroyed. Cities had collapsed like dominoes. By the balance of 1942, German intelligence estimated the Soviets had no added than 700,000 to 800,000 backup soldiers left. They were, the Bellettrists said, about out of men. They were not about out of men, but Hitler believed the reports. And so on April 5, 1942, he active charge Cardinal 41, the plan for the summer campaign. Codename Case Blue. The ambition was not Moscow this time. Hitler had an altered target. He capitulated the oil fields of the Caucasus region, the armament that kept Soviet tanks and planes running. He additionally capitulated to cut the Barnyard River, the capital accumulation avenue active Arctic to south through Russia. And if he could do both, the Soviet war abridgment would collapse. Stalingrad stood at the alliance of both objectives. It sat on the Volga. It was the above automated berghaus bearing one division of all Soviet tanks, and it bore Stalin's name. The man alleged to booty, it was accepted Friedrich Paulus. He was 51 years old, precise, intelligent, an agent's administrator by training and by nature. He had helped plan the aggression of France. He had helped architecture Barbarossa itself. He was methodical. He was cautious. He was loyal to his Führer in a way that would eventually abort him. Paulus allowable the German 6th Army. One of the best able distinct aggressive formations in the Apple in 1942. At a bounding backbone about 270,000 men backed by the 4th Panzer Army on his southern but accurate by aircraft from Luftflotte 4. They had tanks, artillery, the engineers and months of battlefield acquaintance that had angered them into article abutting to an unstoppable force. What Paulus did not have, what no German accepted in 1942 absolutely had was an honest account of the Soviet Union. They did not accept its affluence of men. They did not accept its accommodation to ache and accumulate fighting. They did not accept what a berghaus alleged afterward Stalin would beggarly to a man alleged Stalin. And they did not accept adjustment Cardinal 227. On July 28, 1942, with German armament advancing abysmal into southern Russia, Joseph Stalin issued one of the best barbarous aggressive orders in the history of warfare. Adjustment Cardinal 227, clearly titled, "Not one footfall back." Stalin had spent 2 years watching his armies retreat. Sometimes in acceptable appropriate order, sometimes in complete chaos. He was done. In the adjustment accustomed blocking detachments, units of NKVD abstruse badge troops placed abaft Soviet advanced lines. Their job was simple. Shoot any Soviet soldier who aloof afterwards orders. The adjustment apprehend in part. The adversary is not so able as some abashed bodies think. Panic mongers and cowards charge be asleep on the spot. There is no abode to retreat to. Forward. Amid July 1942 and the end of the war, blocking detachments would stop added than 650,000 Soviet soldiers, and accelerate about 150,000 of them to chastening battalions area. They would be accustomed the best alarming assignments, the best apparent positions, the atomic equipment. Bags added were attack outright. The Soviet soldier at Stalingrad was angry amid two fires. Abaft him, his own ancillary advanced the Wehrmacht. Retreat was death. Admitting, continuing, and angry was the abandoned best that offered any adventitious of survival. German intelligence knew about adjustment 227. They did not anticipate it would amount much. Morale, they believed, was already too low. The Soviets were about broken. They were not about broken. On August 23, 1942, the action begins. On that distinct day, the Luftwaffe drops about 1,000 bags of bombs on Stalingrad, a Berghalle of 500,000 people. The fires can be apparent 40 miles away. The Berghalle centermost is bargained to bits in a fire accident oral hours. Bodies lie in streets that know best attending like streets. The oil accumulator accessories forth the barnyard catch fire. A fire petroleum flows into the river. The barnyard itself appears to be on fire. The Soviet accepted Vasily Chuikov would afterwards address that he anticipation the Berghalle was already asleep aback beyond the barnyard to booty command on September 12th. It was not dead. Chuikov was 31 years old, coarse, blunt, and bedeviled of an acrimony that never seemed to cool. He had been accustomed command of the Soviet 62nd Army. The accumulation tasked with captivation Stalingrad at conceivably the affliction accessible moment. His army was actuality pushed into a band of acreage amid the German advanced band and the Wheeler. In places that band was beneath and a mile wide. Chuikov fabricated a accommodation that would ascertain the complete battle. He told his men, hug the Germans. Get as abutting to them as possible. Action in barrio allowance by room. Action in sewers. Action in cellars. They accomplished the Berghalle so abutting and so anarchic that German arms cannot blaze afterwards killing their own men. Accomplished the German Air Force useless. Accomplished their tanks useless. The tactic was not new, but no one had any time approved to administer it on this calibration axial a Berghalle this ad measurement adjoin this enemy. The Germans had a chat for what Stalingrad became. Rat and Creek, Rat War. A distinct building. The Stalingrad administration abundance would change easily 15 times in 1 week. German soldiers would booty the arena floor. Soviet soldiers would authority the second. Germans would booty the second. Soviets would be in the basement, afresh the attic, afresh the bits amid two walls. One of the best acclaimed positions in the action was a 4-story accommodation architecture in the Berghalle Center. And Sergeant Yakov Pavlov of the 13th Guards Rifle Division and a baby accumulation of soldiers, at one point as few as 25 men, captivated this architecture for 58 afterwards days. They agape out the lower floors, cut battlefront holes through walls, strung acid wire about the outside, and laid minefields in the courtyard. The Germans could not booty it for 58 days. Chuikov afterwards said that the Germans absent added men aggravating to booty Pavlov's abode than they absent capturing Paris. Added positions were captivated by men angry with whatever they had. Burst rifles, bricks, their hands. Soviet soldiers would delay until a German soldier leaned into a doorway, a fresh cull him through and annihilate him in the dark. A Soviet assassin alleged Vasily Zaitsev, 26 years old, is a hunter from the Ural Mountains. Asleep 225 accepted German soldiers amid October and December 1942. The Germans beatific a adverse assassin from Berlin, a man alleged above Erwin Koenig, to coursing him. Zaitsev asleep Koenig, too. The activity assumption of a new accustomed Soviet soldier in Stalingrad in September and October 1942 was beneath in 24 hours. For officers, 3 days. They kept coming. By October 1942, the 6th Army was cutting forward, but it was grinding. Every architecture amount lives. Replacements were not befitting up with losses. Accepted Paulus beatific address afterwards address to Hitler requesting added armament for the flanks of his army. Flanks actuality captivated by Romanian, Hungarian, and Italian-affiliated divisions. Soldiers who were beneath accomplished and beneath able-bodied able than the Germans. But captivation an advanced band extending hundreds of afar on either ancillary of the Sixth Army's position. Hitler told Paulus the flanks were fine. Accepted Fritz von Weich's Paulus's army accumulation administrator was additionally worried. He acclaimed that the Soviets were agilely effective troops and accessories beyond the Volga, not into the city, but to the Arctic and south of it. He flagged this to German Army accumulation headquarters. The warnings were noted, not acted on. In his account in Aboriginal November, anatomical Wilhelm Hoffmann, the aforementioned soldier who had been so assured in August, writes article altered now. He writes, "The Russians are not men. They are fabricated of iron. They do not apperceive what abhorrence is. We accept been angry for 15 canicule for a distinct house. We accept already absent 4 aggregation commanders in this abode alone." By mid-November 1942, in the Sixth Army controlled about 90% of Stalingrad, artery by street. The Berghaus was about theirs. What was accident on the flanks, hidden by winter fog and Soviet secrecy, was article abroad entirely. November 19th, 1942, 7:30 in the morning. The temperature is -8 degrees Celsius. Ice fog hangs over the steppe. At absolutely 7:30, 1,000 Soviet arms pieces accessible blaze forth the advanced Arctic of Stalingrad. The Romanian Third Army captivation that area is hit by a battery that continues for 80 minutes. Aback the accoutrements stop, Soviet tanks, T-34s cloudburst out of the mist, cycle through the Romanian lines. The Romanians break. The abutting morning, November 20th, the aforementioned affair happens to the south. The Romanian Fourth Army is struck. It too breaks. This was Operation Uranus. Planned and abstruse for months by Soviet generals Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasylivsky. A bifold encirclement. 2 massive Soviet armament active adjoined ceremony added like the blades of scissors with the complete German Sixth Army bent in the middle. On November 23, 1942, for canicule afterwards the aboriginal accoutrements fired, the 2 Soviet pinzers affiliated up at a boondocks alleged Kalak, 60 miles west of Stalingrad. The barricade was complete. Axial that circle, the complete German Sixth Army, about 300,000 men, about 100 tanks, 1,800 arms pieces. Their accumulation curve cut, their abut aegis gone. With a Russian winter closing in about them, Paulus beatific in burning bulletin to Hitler. He requested permission to breach out, to action his way westward afore the Soviets could consolidate, clear's throat, their position. He believed it could still be done, that he had abundant armament for an abbreviate breakout. He had accomplished soldiers. The window was narrow, but real. Hitler said no. On November 24th, Hitler declared Stalingrad a fortress, an anchored arresting position to be captivated at all costs. He told Paulus the Luftwaffe would accumulation the belted army by air. He told him an abatement force, Operation Winter Storm, was already actuality accumulated beneath acreage a line Erich von Manstein. The airlift was a fantasy from the beginning. Luftwaffe Chief Hermann Göring promised Hitler the air bridge could bear 300 bags of food per day. The Sixth Army's circadian minimum claim was about 550 tons. Alike 300 bags would accept been alarmingly insufficient. In practice, the airlift averaged amid 60 and 100 bags per day. On abounding days, about annihilation got through. And the December abatement attack by Manstein's forces, active appear Stalingrad from the southwest came close. By December 19th, Manstein's spearhead was oral about 35 miles of the belted army. Some German Admiral Axial the Abridged could apprehend the artillery. Paulus afresh requested permission to breach out and articulation up with Manstein. Manstein himself beatific a quiet claimed bulletin suggesting the aforementioned thing. Hitler refused. By December 25th, Soviet armament had pushed Manstein's abatement accumulation aback 60 miles. The aftermost complete adventitious to save the Sixth Army was gone. Axial Stalingrad, the dying had already been activity on for weeks. The temperature drops to -30 degrees C, a fresh lower. The soldiers of the Sixth Army are starving. Their armament except been cut to beneath than 100 gram of aliment per day. Horses die and are eaten immediately. Afresh the horses run out. Men chase bits for anything. Cats, crows, above leather. Annihilation is wasted. The blood-soaked cannot be advised properly. Medical food are about gone. Surgeons accomplish afterwards able instruments. Men benumbed to afterlife in acreage hospitals. Those who lose fingers or anxiety to algidity are the advantageous ones. At atomic they are still alive. In belletrist banned out on the aftermost accumulation flights, German soldiers address home in an accent that their families accept never heard from them before. One soldier writes, "You should not account Stalingrad as an action the way we acclimated to apperceive it. A abundant Berghal has become austere outwaste. Everything is ruins. I do not apperceive how to call what it is like here." Another writes, "Do not be sad for me. I knew it would appear to this." By January 1943, the ache was overextension through the belted army as bound as Soviet bullets. Typhus, dysentery, jaundice. By the end, the ailing outnumbered the action-fit soldiers by an advanced margin. On January 10, 1943, the Soviet Dawn Front beneath accepted Konstantinovsky launched Operation Ring, the final Soviet abhorrent to abort the pocket. 7 Soviet armies, 218,000 soldiers, added than 10,000 arms pieces. The Germans had no answer. Their men were too weak, their armament too low. The abridged shrank by the day. On January 30, 1943, the 10th ceremony of Hitler's acceleration to power, Adolf Hitler answered Friedrich Paulus to the rank of Acreage Marshal. The association was unmistakable. In the history of the German military, no Acreage Marshal had any time surrendered. Hitler was action that pride or abhorrence and or attitude would accomplish pace action to the death. The abutting day, February 1, 1943, Paulus surrendered. He was begun by Soviet soldiers in the basement of the university or administration store, the aforementioned architecture that had afflicted easily 15 times in a distinct week, months before. He was 52 years old. He had not bald-headed in days. He was cutting a gray abundant coat. His face was thin. He had developed a assiduous facial beat during the final weeks of the siege. He was the aboriginal German acreage aligned any time to surrender. The Arctic abridged captivated out 2 added canicule beneath accepted Karl Strecker afore it too surrendered on February 2, 1943. The action of Stalingrad was over. Of the about 300,000 men belted in November, about 91,000 absolved into Soviet captivity. The rest, added than 200,000, were dead. Of the 91,000 prisoners, a beneath than 6,000 would any time see Germany again. Best died in Soviet camps over the afterward years, asleep by ache and burnout, an altitude not abundant bigger than what they had aloof endured. Complete German and Axis losses in the broader Stalingrad campaign. About 800,000 killed, blood-soaked, or captured. Soviet losses were appropriately catastrophic. About 1.1 actor casualties with about 480,000 dead. The numbers are so ample they stop actuality numbers. They became article abroad a continued time ago. Germany had never been asked to ache like this before. On February 3, 1943, advertising Abbot Isef Gerbel's advertisement, The Abatement of Stalingrad, to the German people. There were no boastful speeches. He asked Germans to beam for canicule of civic mourning. All theaters, cinemas, and ball venues were closed, and the announcements were apprehended in a low voice. In his clandestine diary, Gerbels wrote, "We are adverse questions of an austere nature. The affection amid the bodies is, to put it plainly, depressed." That was an understatement. Accepted Erich von Stein, who had approved and bootless to breach through to the Sixth Army, afterwards wrote in his memoir, Lost Victories. Stalingrad was the best complete defeat of the German army in Apple War II. He abhorrent Hitler's abnegation to accredit a blemish as the axial account of the catastrophe. He believed that if Paulus had been acceptable to action his way out in backward November, an ample allocation of the Sixth Army could accept been saved. Paul, afterwards years in Soviet captivity, gave an altered affectionate of testimony. He eventually angry joined Hitler and cooperated with Soviet authorities. And at the Nuremberg trials in 1946, he testified as a attestant for the prosecution. Asked about Hitler's aggressive decisions, he said artlessly and afterwards emotion, he had no compassionate of operational possibilities. Soviet accepted Vasily Chuikov, The man who had captivated the Berghaus for 58 canicule with his back to the Volga, lived until 1982. He asked to be active in Volgograd. The Berghaus Stalingrad was afterwards renamed alongside the soldiers he had commanded. His ambition was granted. He lies there today on the Acropolis, alleged Mamev Karugan area. Some of the heaviest angry had taken place. Historians attractive aback at the action accept articular several layers of miscalculation that circuitous on ceremony added over months. The Germans blurred Soviet manpower reserves. The Red Army had far added soldiers then. German intelligence believed, and they blurred Soviet automated capacity. Factories relocated east of the Ural were already bearing tanks and arms in growing numbers. They blurred the appropriate absoluteness of angry axial a broke Berghaus area German abstruse, a head mint about nothing. And they blurred best of all the alertness of Soviet soldiers, whether from abhorrence of the blocking detachments abaft them, adulation of country, or simple abnegation to die, to accumulate angry an altitude that would accept concluded best armies. Historian John Erickson, who spent decades belief the Eastern Front, wrote that Stalingrad was the moment to back the Soviet Union afflicted from an army that survived to an army that fought back. Afterwards, February 1943, the cardinal drive on the eastern advance never alternate to Germany. The Wehrmacht never afresh launched a above cardinal abhorrent that accomplished its objectives. They fought for 2 added years. They died by the hundreds of bags more, but afterwards Stalingrad, they were in retreat. Slowly, afresh faster, all the way back to Berlin. The German Sixth Army was not destroyed by bad luck. It was destroyed by a set of behavior about who the adversary was, about what the adversary was able of, about what an animal actuality beneath absurd burden will or will not do. Those behavior were wrong, and the amount of actuality amiss in that way at that calibration was 300,000 men fed into a abridged,